Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. As Piet says, I'm actually an investigative journalist, not a political analyst, so he should be analyzing the politics. But I'm going to give it our best shot. I'm going to speak in English. Most of us here are Afrikaans speaking, but I was asked to speak in English, so I will do that. I think for all of us sitting here, politics as we go into this coming election is a complete seesaw. We don't know what to feel. You think, one moment you think everything's going to be okay, and then an ex-convicts party wins another by-election in the Western Cape, and Jacob Zuma has a new party that he calls Umkhonto Sizwe. There are these curveballs all the time, and I think there's this unique South African condition where you kind of fear the worst, but the worst never happens, and then you constantly think, but maybe this is the time where the worst could happen. And I wanted to take a short look at some political scenarios as we go into the next 4 weeks leading up to the elections. I'm going to try and do it quite quickly, and I'm going to refer not to my views, but the views of people who run polls and who do this for a living. So the last Ipsos poll says that the ANC support has fallen to just over 40%, and this was the first poll where the MK party was part of the poll. And the thing with polls, and I think it's something that confuses me, and I'm sure it confuses you, is that they're often these completely different kind of points of view. Like the latest what they call a weekly tracking snapshot by the Social Research Foundation's research, their poll. They look at a weekly snapshot of what's going on, and they say the complete opposite. The latest one says that the ANC is actually gaining traction to such an extent that 50% in the election is now becoming a possibility. And I was trying to understand this, and I think the best way to understand how polls work and how they sometimes give you differing kind of pictures is that it's always a snapshot of time. So I'm sure this snapshot will change as we go along, but anyway, that is a trend that I want to speak about. Gareth van Onselen, who's a political commentator, says that about that weekly snapshot, he says that the ANC has been surging in the last 2 weeks. And I've mentioned this, he says that 50% now becomes a distinct possibility. And he says that the surge of the ANC is at the expense of what he calls comers, parties like the DA, MK, EFF, IFP, and they're all tracking down. The most interesting thing, I think, or the most significant thing about what he says that I want to look at is that he says this kind of surge of the ANC points to another possibility, that we have all the kind of going the intelligence around the coming election has always been that the voter turnout is going to be low. What he says is that this might actually indicate that the voter turnout might be higher than we think. He says that this contestation of the ANC could drive up the voter turnout in this election. En dit bring ons vir my by die groot vraag, die grootste vraag rondom hierdie verkiesing oor voter turnout. En ek gaan weer kyk na wat van Onselen sê. Ons kyk gou, we look at the turnout in 1994, voter turnout was 87%. In 2019, it was down to 66%. And Gareth van Onselen suggests that with this new surge of the ANC that we've been seeing, he's suggesting that it's time to actually now introduce the possibility of a 70% turnout. And the issue around turnout is that it affects different parties differently. A low turnout will generally hurt the EFF because the voters that are drawn to the EFF are often people who are angry and alienated, and so are least likely or most likely not to turn up, whereas the DA benefits from a low turnout because more of its voters are committed and will tend to go and vote. So I just thought those were two interesting things to look at in terms of voter turnout. I wanted to just look at my time. I wanted to quickly look at the MK party and what we know about the MK party, because I think that's something that bothers all of us. I need to look, I can actually see better that way. So the first poll after the MK party was established gave us this kind of snapshot of the possibility that the MK party could grow to 50% of the vote in KwaZulu-Natal, and also a very significant party nationally. The suggestion was 9% and maybe above, and that it could become the third biggest political party in South Africa. Now, there's been a lot of water under the bridge since then. Over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of turmoil within the party. The party's youth leader has been kicked out, and a number of top other officials recently, and there are suggestions that there will be more people that will be thrown out. The reason the party has given is that the people, amongst them the top 4 in the party, were working with external forces, and what is becoming very clear is that the MK party is Zuma, and that its core vote, the core support will be an ethnic vote, and the predictions of massive national support is possibly not as accurate as we initially thought. I spoke to Max de Prieur, my editor-in-chief, yesterday, and he says the MK party, he thinks, will come in around 4%. I also spoke to my colleague Adrian Basson, the editor of News 24, and he said to me yesterday, he says between 7 and 9%. So let's move on from that, but I thought it's maybe important to look at that. So we've looked at the polls. We don't have a crystal ball. We understand these are snapshots in time, but what is a probable scenario? We know the ANC will win the most votes in this election. If it gets less than 50% support, it'll have to seek some kind of coalition with other parties. The Ipsos poll says it's going to crash and burn to kind of the 40% margin, but if it tracks closer to 50%, if it comes in as closer to 50%, the more probable scenario is that it'll have to form an alliance with a number of small parties, and that's not me saying that. It's the first big scenario of the leading advisory firm Oxford Economics. They modeled this scenario, that the ANC will do relatively well, close enough to 50, in the high 40s, that they will be able to form a coalition with 5 smaller parties. I've got them up there. And if this scenario, which I think is the most probable scenario, if this scenario happens, then it'll kind of be business as usual. There won't be any, from those smaller parties, there won't be huge pressure to push the ANC away from their current policy position. I'm going to, I don't know how much time, I think I'm going to move quite fast to the question about, are we resilient enough? The Afrikaanse woord is my mooier veerkragtig. And my answer to this question, against the backdrop of this kind of broad political stuff that I've just sketched, is that the answer is absolutely yes. And I don't base that only on the many stories I've written about this for Vrye Weekblad, but I also base this on my own personal experience about what I see in the rural community where I grew up and where I go to often. My brother farms on our family farm in Indwe in the Eastern Cape, and like most small towns in South Africa, the state is there in name, but in practice has completely disappeared. Municipal services are erratic at best, and the water treatment plant has collapsed, and the police is a non-entity when it comes to security issues. And yet somehow this community of Indwe has managed to kind of go on. And the reason it goes on is because the community has stepped into this gap, into this vacuum that the disappearing state has left. And there are 2 reasons. all of you sitting here will know the one reason, and that is that the private sector, in the case of India, the farmers and the businesses, have stepped in to do the stuff that the state is no longer doing, from handling the water situation to dealing with municipal issues. And the second reason, and this is the important one because I think this is where our resilience comes in, is that the reason that community and many other communities continues to survive is because ordinary South Africans are actually far more constructive and have far better relationships with each other than we are led to believe. I've spoken about, I want to take that little snapshot of the town I grew up into a bigger snapshot, and I think this is happening everywhere. I think there's a silent revolution happening in civil society. We see it in Johannesburg, where people are getting involved in trying to revitalize the inner city. We see it in community policing forums where people are getting more involved. We see it in court cases where community organizations are taking municipalities to court to try and force certain levels of service delivery. Some of you might have been there. We recently had the Solutions for the Platteland conference in Bothaville, where there were 80 community organizations and individuals who showcased what they were doing to take over the job that the government is supposed to be doing, from fixing potholes to setting up security structures and sorting out issues in communities and even building medical facilities. I think it's absolutely astounding what we see everywhere. I see it everywhere I go as a journalist, this thing happening. I want to close with an Afrikaans saying, which is "Nood leer bid." I think we certainly have the resilience to survive and to thrive and to deal with the challenges, whatever they are, coming from this election. Of course, private citizens should not be having to do the job of government and, in essence, often double paying to do the job of government or to do the job that their taxes should be paying for. But it is what it is. That is what is happening in South Africa at the moment. And for me, it underlines this enormous reservoir of resilience that we've built up over a long period of time, during which the ANC government has basically left us in the lurch. In Afrikaans, we say "Nood leer bid," that in times of great difficulty, people find solutions. That's most certainly what's happening in South Africa. But I also have seen this over and over again, is that nood does another thing. It makes people talk to each other across boundaries. And that is where South Africa's true resilience lies, is that if this huge crisis and need that we have can force people across the boundaries, the historical boundaries we have, and force them to talk and to find solutions together, that is where our future lies. I see it in my own community. I see it all over the country where I go. Ons ontgin daardie veerkragtigheid wat lê en met mekaar praat.